Chapter 1. When the speed god MiG-31K took off, Ukraine was shocked. On August 28th, the international news was shocked by a detail that was enough to make military analysts leave their chairs. The Russian MiG-31K interceptor fighter took off. Immediately, the entire territory of Ukraine was put on a state of widespread airstrike alert. What made the whole country hold its breath after just one takeoff? The answer lies in the Kinzhal hypersonic missile, the weapon that the MiG-31K is capable of carrying. This is not only a missile advertised as being able to reach a speed 10 times faster than sound, but also capable of attacking deep into enemy territory at a distance of up to 2,000 kilometers. If we open the defense map and draw a circle with a radius of 2,000 kilometers from where the MiG-31K took off, not only Kyiv, Kharkov, Odessa of Ukraine will be included, but even Poland, Romania, Slovakia, NATO members will see the shadow of the Kinzhal hovering above their heads. This explains why just a flap of the MiG-31K's wings startled the whole of Europe. Reason: why did Russia launch the MiG-31K at this time? From a tactical perspective, Russia's launch of the MiG-31K is not accidental. This is a psychological move and a strategic deterrent. At a time when Ukraine is expecting a new batch of weapons from the West, including long-range missiles and modern air defense systems, Russia clearly wants to send a message. Don't think that reinforcements are safe. As soon as the MiG-31K leaves the runway, everything is in sight. For example, if we compare the Ukrainian battlefield to a chess game, the MiG-31K taking off is no different than Russia touching the queen on the chessboard. Without even having to move, just placing a hand on it, the opponent already sees the danger. Ukraine knows that Kinzhal is not much, but its destructive power is too terrible. Direct consequences. Ukraine is on alert throughout the territory. As soon as the radar detected the MiG-31K taking off, the air raid warning system across Ukraine simultaneously sounded its sirens. People from Lviv to Kyiv, from Kharkov to Odessa had to go to the shelter. This has two major consequences: causing extremely strong psychological pressure. Imagine the entire country of 40 million people having to live in a situation where every time you hear the sound of an airplane engine, you think Kinzhal is flying in. This is a way to attack the spirit, exhausting the endurance of civilians. Disruption of military and civilian activities. Every time the whole territory is alerted, transportation, supplies, and even high-level meetings must be suspended. No need to shoot, just take off. Russia has created chaos. Illustrative example: Kinzhal obsession on the map. Imagine on the map. From Soltsy Air Base in western Russia, the MiG-31K takes off. A radius of 2,000 kilometers covers the whole of Ukraine, spreading to Warsaw, Poland, and even reaching Berlin, Germany. This is like a 2-meter-tall basketball player just needs to stand in the middle of the court, spread his arms out to cover half of the backboard. Just appearing makes the opponent feel uncomfortable. Strategic significance. For Russia, this is a way to demonstrate deterrence, especially when they want to prove to the West that the red line is not just words. Every time the MiG-31K takes off, the arms market and international politics must monitor. For Ukraine, they are forced to spend defense resources, air defense, radar, and civilian labor every time the alarm is raised. If prolonged, this is an indirect economic bleeding tactic. For the West, seeing that aid to Ukraine cannot just be sending more weapons, but also must take into account the factor of high-altitude air defense against hypersonic weapons, something that even NATO currently does not have a thorough solution for.
Chapter 2. Why did just one MiG-31K make the whole of Ukraine alert? If you only look at the surface, many people might think, hey, it's just one plane, why make such a fuss? But in the context of the Ukraine-Russia war, the fact that a MiG-31K took off is no different from a hot-tempered neighbor walking around the yard with a huge gas tank. Everyone has to be careful, because the risk is not in exploding, but when it will explode. 1. The legendary characteristics of the MiG-31K and Kinjal. The MiG-31K was originally improved from the MiG-31, a fighter interceptor capable of supersonic flight and operating at very high altitudes. But the scary thing here is that it can carry the Kinjal hypersonic missile, meaning dagger. The Kinjal missile is advertised to have a range of about 2,000 kilometers and a maximum speed of 10 times the speed of sound. That is, if launched from Belarusian airspace, the Kinjal can completely cover the entire territory of Ukraine in just a few minutes. This is the reason why when the MiG-31K stirred to take off, Ukraine had no choice but to turn on the national red alert. Ukraine has a strong air defense system, but it's true that Ukraine has received Patriot, NASAMS, IRIS-T, and many types of advanced radars from the West. But even US military experts have to admit that intercepting a standard Kinjal is extremely difficult. The speed is too fast for radar to track. The flight trajectory is more flexible than traditional ballistic missiles. The warning time is almost zero. A typical example: in May 2023, an air defense battle in Kyiv saw the US Patriot successfully shoot down several Kinjal missiles. But this is considered a rare victory because the system can't always react in time. So, instead of taking risks, Ukraine chose the safe option, a widespread alarm so that civilians and key infrastructure can take shelter. 3. Psychological and strategic impact. Russia understands the psychological impact of letting the MiG-31K take off. Whether or not it launches a missile, the roar of the engine and the fact that Ukrainian radar detects it in the air is enough to put the whole country in a state of tension. Imagine, every few days, the sirens blare, students have to run to the basement, hospitals have to move patients to the underground, factories stop working, trains stop moving. This is the invisible weapon that Russia is using to erode Ukraine's fighting spirit and endurance. 4. A little humor. A Ukrainian soldier once joked, "Every time the MiG-31K takes off, Kyiv people don't know whether to turn on the TV to watch football or go to the bomb shelter. In the end, just after watching the first half, the sirens blare, go to the shelter, and when they come back, the match is over." The story sounds funny, but it reflects the terrible inconvenience that war brings to daily life. Chapter 3. Strategic significance, consequences, and messages sent from the incident. What message does Russia want to send? Russia's deployment of MiG-31K in the current context is not simply a threat. It also carries many layers of meaning. The message to Ukraine: everywhere you are is under your radar. Nowhere is safe. The message to the West: no matter how many air defense systems you provide, we still have a way to create a constant threat. The message to Russian public opinion: we have the technological advantage. We are not at a disadvantage. In modern warfare, the media battlefield is as important as the battlefield of bombs and bullets. A MiG-31K takeoff may not bring immediate military victory, but it has great propaganda value. What can Ukraine learn from this event? For Ukraine, the nationwide alarm event further reinforces the view that they need more air defense shields, especially Patriots. Additionally, this is also a wake-up call for the West. If they want to protect Ukraine's infrastructure, they will have to provide more and more continuous aid. At the same time, Ukraine also took advantage of these alarms to call for international support. Because once the whole country has to live in a state of nervous tension every day, the international community will feel more clearly the severity that the people are suffering. Impact on the war situation. In the short term, the MiG-31K takeoff creates widespread tension, forcing Ukraine to spend a lot of resources to respond. In the long term, if Russia maintains this pressure, Ukraine may fall into a state of strategic fatigue, especially when air defense resources can't cover the entire vast territory. But Ukraine cannot be underestimated. History has proven that the more difficult the situation, the more creative they are in their resistance. For example, they used cheap UAVs to attack Moscow, turning Russia's psychological trick into a double-edged sword. 4. A little historical connection. If we look at it more broadly, this event is reminiscent of the Cold War period, when just one flight of US B-52 strategic bombers taking off for a training exercise, the Soviet Union had to install a missile defense system in readiness. History is repeating itself, except that now the battlefield is taking place on Ukrainian soil. 5. The end. Message to the world. In short, the incident of Russian MiG-31K takeoff, Ukraine puts the whole country on alert, is a clear demonstration of the fierce nature of modern warfare, not only fighting with guns and bullets, but also psychological warfare, media warfare, and war of national attrition. It reminds us that in today's world, the line between safe and dangerous can be erased by just one plane taking off. And as long as the war continues, Ukraine, Russia, and the whole world will have to live in the shadow of uncertainty. Overall, conclusion. The MiG-31K incident that alerted Ukraine across its territory was not just a military development, but the intersection of many factors: technology, psychology, politics, and propaganda. It reflects how fierce modern warfare is when a small action can trigger a wave of global tension. If you find this analysis useful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to History and War so we can continue to bring you in-depth, sharp, and intimate analyses of the hottest events in the world. Thanks for watching. See you again.